down backpacking quilt. Comes in a stuff sack, but I went ahead and pulled it out, fluffed it up. It took a couple hours, fluffing it multiple times to get it kind of big and poofy. When it comes from the factory, it's been crushed for a while, so yeah, when it first comes out, it looks pretty sad, but just let it rest for a while. Hang it up, fluff it once or twice. It poofs up pretty good. Let's get it spread out. Alright, there it is. Guess I might as well measure it while it's spread out. .52 inches. By 77, maybe a bit more. It has these snaps all the way down. This is the head, that's the foot. So I'm not planning on snapping it up at the head, because that's not really the point of a quilt. You can, but boy, it's tight. So with it snapped into a tube, the width becomes maybe 2 feet, probably not even, yeah, like 22, 23 inches. So that's pretty narrow squeeze if you've got broad shoulders, but hey, that's not really the way to use a quilt. You can if you want to, but I'm going to leave the top open. The bottom, however, the snaps will be great for that, because that forms a very nice foot box. These two drawstrings. There's information if anybody's curious about that. And it is machine washable. So I'm not sure quite why it has this design. There's 2 separate drawstrings. It goes around. Normally what I've seen is there will be a single drawstring that comes out of here, like a loop that comes out of here with a single toggle, and these ends are just anchored over here. But instead they've chosen to do 2 separate ones with 2 separate toggles, so not maybe quite as convenient as it could have been, but maybe there's some reason to do it that way. And if you cinch it down pretty tight, then this is maybe just a tiny little hole there. But yeah, not too worried about any drafts happening in the footbox once it's cinched down. Alright, let's measure the whole length. Once it's cinched down, because that does subtract from the length a little bit. I'll call that maybe 72 inches. Sure, why not? 72 inches with the footbox cinched down. Alright, I guess the big question with this quilt is it any good at all? It's a budget down quilt, so kind of premium materials, 20D nylon, and some kind of cheaper down inside. I've seen a handful of quills kind of poke through and pull out, which the actual down doesn't have that kind of structure, so there are some feathers mixed in. So the question is, will it stay warm? Yeah. So let's hold it up to a light and just see if it has any obvious cold spots. I don't know if the camera's showing that super clearly, but what I'm seeing is that the fill is covering the full square, except for, I mean, obviously it's not got fancy trapezoidal baffles or anything, so there is an area, like maybe that one is a little worse than others next to it, where there's thinner spots where that stitching goes across. But I'm not seeing underfilled squares in the middle. There's like kind of down trapped in, I guess, where it got sewed across. Try. Yeah, and even spots that are kind of thin, if you flip it, they do even out. So I don't know. I'm not an expert on down quilts. I've used a number of down sleeping bags, but this is the first quilt I've owned, so I'm not quite sure what to expect. That doesn't look bad to me. That looks uniform. It didn't look like this when I first got it. When I first got it, it was, you can kind of imagine sort of these getting compressed. And it looked sort of anemic and crushed and half filled. It looked like it was a third filled, but it had been in that stuff sack for who knows, weeks or months. So once it fluffs up, gosh, every little square looks like a full pillow. That doesn't look bad to me. I'm sort of having low expectations, just because it's on a budget of $65 and £1. It's a very light blanket. It's a very inexpensive blanket for down. So honestly, that exceeds my expectations. But my expectations were pretty medium. So hey, I think that's pretty good. And I think it is worth noting that it's not just the budget of $65, it's also the budget of £1 4 ounces. And if they pack it with a bunch more fill, it's going to be a 2-pound quilt like everybody else's quilt, or almost like a, the synthetic quilts start to get heavier, so it's a lightweight quilt. Full disclosure, I haven't used it. I haven't actually gone out winter camping in it or anything adventurous like that. If I took this out in freezing temperatures, I would absolutely be pairing it with a sleeping pad that has a high R value and some thermal underwear and maybe a backup blanket. I don't know. So I'm thinking of this as an ultra lightweight summer hiking quilt. I'm sure it will do fine in weather that's 50 degrees or above. I honestly don't remember what the temperature rating was on the listing, if it had one. I did try it out in my 65-degree basement, and it was totally cozy for that, but that's obviously not a super rigorous test. Yeah, you can see. Alright, so I'm not covered in feathers right now I just see a couple floating around. I was kind of covered in feathers the very first time I took it out and packed it up, so maybe those were just from the factory. They were kind of loose and clinging to it. I thought they were coming out of it, and I had one that did kind of pull through a seam, one feather, but now that I've had it in and out a couple times, I'm not seeing that anymore, just a little bit of fluff. Alright, it's got this sort of dry sack design where you pull that closed, twist it, and then clip it. And now we can weigh it. All right, 1 pound, 6.4 ounces, and that's with the stuff sack. I weighed it without the stuff sack earlier, and it was 1 pound, 5 ounces, I believe. So just slightly over what the listing says.